Hey guys, this is Anastasia Identifier, and this is my week 15 video for the YouTube Pagan Challenge. This week's subject is, do you do spells regularly, and if so, what are they, or what do they deal with? For me, what I do for spells are actual spell crafts, meaning I will take a craft, make it, and within that craft I will put a spell. So I'll make a candle, but the candle has a spell inscribed upon it. I will make incense, but say a spell while I am charging it. All herbs that I use are in conjunction to this spell. Things like that. I kind of thought for a minute when making this video, how would I want to kind of go through and explain the process, and I thought the best thing for me to do would be to actually create a spell craft tonight and tape it so that you could see kind of what I do, what my process is. This may get to be a kind of a longer video, so I apologize preemptively. As is kind of common, but I do still feel the need to put out the disclaimer, especially since it's a YouTube Pagan Challenge video. I don't know if someone's just popping in for this one video, and I don't want them to get the wrong idea. This video is solely my process. This has, in no way is this what anyone else needs to do or agree with or adhere to. I think we all have our own ways of doing things, and the great thing about this challenge is we can share how we do these things and kind of see what our similarities are, but also see what our differences are, and kind of work within that. So I by no means am I saying this is what you must do for a spell or what have you, because I'm not that person. But I'm just sharing how I might go about it. Tonight what I'm going to do is make a sachet bag. Basically, it's kind of like a gree-gree bag in a way, but not really, because gree-gree bags traditionally, you use 13 items within them. It can be plant life, mineral, or animal, and it's kind of you use a certain kind of cloth, you use certain ways of doing things, and then it kind of becomes this live thing that the person who you give it to, you need to feed it, and so on and so forth. And for me, a sachet bag is, the way I make them at least, is it's a spell. If you choose to feed it and treat it as you would a gree-gree, by all means you certainly can, but the spell is there regardless. It should work regardless. And I can use as many or as little ingredients as I feel called to. Whenever I start a craft, it 9 times out of 10 is for someone else. Very rarely do I make a spell craft and keep it for myself. Usually I have someone in mind and a purpose in mind. There have been those times when I've created something not really understanding why, just knowing the inspiration was there and, hey, I'm doing this. And then, you know, a week or so down the road realize, oh, this is meant for so-and-so because they're going through this. But that happens pretty rare. Usually it's a, hey, you're struggling with this, or you're working on this, or learning about this. Can I make you something? Or someone will ask me to make them something. Tonight, I am making a sachet bag for someone who's kind of going through and kind of on the precipice of realizing that maybe they are starting to feel a pull towards a spiritual awakening of sorts, I guess. He's always kind of been, I believe in science. If you can show it to me, I believe it. But he's always felt pulls to nature and to kind of these codes and honors and things like that. But now he's starting to realize, I feel like I should have reverence for something. I should honor something, but I don't necessarily know what that is. And so I said, you know, I am going to make you something to help guide you, to help key into your intuition, and perhaps that will help you understand where maybe life is bringing you, maybe open it up to a path. Not necessarily that he will end up on anywhere near my path. He could realize, you know, hey, I'm a Christian. Okay, awesome, whatever works. It's just purely something for him to kind of focus and perhaps find a connection and find a key or open himself up for seeing where this road might lead. So I began knowing who this was for. I began understanding what I wanted to make for them. I then start with my research because I love research. I have several steno notepads that kind of become my working book of shadows. For example, I'm gonna move this bad boy. That is one of my steno notepads, and that's another crap that I'm making for one of my friends. And that's pretty much what I'll do. I'll take it and start jotting down what I call blueprints. These blueprints start with the day that I decide I'm going to start working on this creation, start blueprinting things out and planning. Oftentimes I'll come up with the name for the craft right away. It'll hit me. I like naming my spellcrafts. I'm not entirely sure why. I just find it a nice connector, and it helps keep my mind focused, especially when the name hits me at first. If I get that initial, oh, this is what it should be called because this is what it's dealing with, throughout my planning and creation of that item, it's cool to have a quick little name in my head at all times to keep that focus there. So I'm going to show you kind of how these ones started out, maybe. So I started this yesterday. Ooh, there we go. Sorry, I need to figure out which way my finger goes. 412. And the name came really quick, Seeker of the Eye. And then I write a quick little summation on the intent. I'll just read it because I realize I can't get the whole thing on camera. Using Witch's Rune of the Eye for connection and intuition, seeking a higher power. So that was a quick summation. My inspiration I'm pulling from the Witch's Rune of the Eye, because I'm trying to aid Phil in connection and intuition, seeking a possible higher power or higher purpose, I think is probably the better phrase for him, at least, is kind of looking to see what that higher purpose is, what code of honor it is that he feels in his heart of hearts, so to speak. Now, the next phase of creation for me is herbs. I love herbs. I connect with herbs, always have, always will. So whenever I do a craft, I don't think I've made a craft where herbs are not in the blend. I love researching them. I love finding correspondences. I especially love finding personal correspondences for them. And I think that's a piece of advice I can give anyone and everyone. If you're looking for it, I'm sure everyone and anyone can school me on some things. But for me, when you work with something long enough or decent enough, or even sometimes I think it hits you over the head right away. When you work with things, you find, hey, when I work with this, I feel this way or I feel that way. You don't need to read it in a reference book. You don't need to read it online. No one has to tell you a correspondence for you to feel it. My best example for this is amber. Amber resin is probably one of my favorite things to work with. I absolutely adore it. If I look for it in correspondence books, online, things like that, it will oftentimes say it's great for healing. It's wonderful for pushing out negativity and pulling in positivity. And that's true for me, but I also find it has this warming attribute. It very much connects to my patron god, Cernunnos. It is calming for me. It helps me with analyzing situations. It helps me kind of put myself out of my body and kind of look at things from different perspectives and get a clearer picture. It helps with clarity. It helps with patience. All of that stuff is what I personally experience with that. No one else might ever experience it, but for me it is a personal association and a personal correspondence that I have with that resin. So whenever working with a spell or a craft, really pay attention to those personal things, especially with things like color correspondences. A color like the color red could be lust and passion for one person, and it could be anger and rage for another. So it's really a good thing for you to hone in on what you personally believe. Go with that gut instinct. Go with that intuition. If you are making a craft for another person, you know, try to key into their energy. Try to see what they might find to be true on some level, if you're able to do that. Otherwise, you certainly can go with traditional correspondences and what you find in reference guides as well. For me, when I'm also making something for someone else, I like to use an identifier. You can certainly go with things like hair, fingernail clippings, blood even. For me, I like to use herbs. There are a couple sites I found online, and I apologize, I didn't jot down the address for them, so I apologize. But they actually have herbs that correspond with certain zodiac signs. This is a huge thing for me. That is 9 times out of 10 what I use as an identifier. I will find out the person's zodiac sign and go to those correspondence charts and choose from those herbs what speaks to me for that person, what connects. And I usually choose 3 herbs that correspond with that zodiac sign for that person, and that is their identifier. I do oftentimes work with 3s. I like the number 3. It's a very sacred number to me. My herbal blends are usually 9 herbs or resins or oils or what have you. Basically 9 items or 13 items. 9 stands for the tripled goddess tripled, and 13 is just an extremely sacred number for the goddess. So I like working within that. Tonight's craft is actually going against that. When it comes to Phil, he really identifies and relates much more with the masculine energy. So when I was writing this out, I was like, oh my gosh, I got to 9 items, and I'm like, nope, that feels wrong, that feels wrong. Maybe I need to go to 13. And then I got to 13, and I'm still sitting there going, nope, this feels wrong, I'm missing something. And it kind of hit me over the head in a way that I'm using divine feminine numbers for this when really he associates much more with the masculine energy. I should be working with sacred numbers for the masculine. For me, I associate that with my patron god, which is Cernunnos. His sacred number is 7 or 14, which is 7 doubled. Where I got that, I found a couple of correspondence books that said 7 is his number, as well as 14 for his dual X, for 7 being doubled. And I really liked that. It related to the antlers on a stag having 7 tines, and if you look at both antlers, 14 tines. And for me, it relates more to the dual aspect of Cernunnos. He is a god of light, but also a god of dark. So you have the number 7 as his sacred number. Well, to represent both sides of him, you need that twice. So 14. So that is what I went with for Phil's blend here to go in his sachet bag. So I've got 14 items, not counting stones, but 14 herbs, resins, flowers, what have you. The first set that I have are his identifiers, or his zodiac signs. Phil is on a cusp. He is Capricorn and Aquarius, so the joke is usually he's Cap Aquarius. So what I did was I looked at Capricorn, took 2 herbs from Capricorn, and then looked at Aquarius and took 2 herbs from Aquarius. The 2 herbs from Capricorn I chose were mugwort and oak moss. I really liked these as well because mugwort really identifies as the lady, which I like having the Lord, the lady, elementals, or the elements I should say, and the good folk represented in all of my crafts regardless of who they're going to. So for me, mugwort really relates to the lady. I like that. For me, oak moss. Oak is a very sacred tree to good folk or the fae. Oak moss, so in turn, oak moss I relate very much to the fae as well. Then for Aquarius, we have nutmeg and Palo Santo. Palo Santo is actually a really amazing wood. It's so wonderful. If you want to smudge, but you don't necessarily like the smell of sage, Palo Santo is amazing. And it actually is a wood that he loves the smell of. So when I saw that related to his one of his cusp signs, I'm like, oh, that's perfect. So here we have the oak moss, the nutmeg, and the mugwort all kind of put together. And I didn't chop the oak moss too much because it's going in a sachet bag. It doesn't need to be chopped. And here's a stick of Palo Santo. So I'm going to set that to the side. Oh, excuse me. The next set is a set of 3, and this is for opening the mind, opening the spirit. Here we have cinnamon, dandelion root, and Arabic gum powder. All 3 of those are great for spiritual openings. Cinnamon is also extremely protective. It heightens psychic vibrations. It very much, it's a spice I absolutely adore and love using. Dandelion root is really great with divination. It's great with vision quests as well, I find. And Arabic gum is, again, it's great for opening to the spirit and meditation. So that is why I use those 3. Next we have protection, and for protection I grabbed my elemental smudge that I made not too long ago. Basically I took an herb resin, an herb or resin, or a wood, there it is, herb, resin, and wood, that correspond with each of the 4 elements. So in this we have sage for earth, frankincense for air, dragon's blood for fire, and sandalwood for water. Each of those are cleansing and or protective. Dragon's blood I also really love because it again gives you that heightening of vibrations. So I like adding that to add a little more oomph to it. And then the last bit I have is for abundance and success. Basically, I want him to find something in this bag. I want this bag to lend itself to his quest for whatever it is he seeks. So in here we have chamomile, ginger, and an orange slice. I like the orange slice especially because it is very representative of the god. I like the solar power. I like the feeling of it. I know some people do view oranges as more of a feminine thing. For me, and it may be more of a personal correspondence, I believe I have seen in traditional that no, it is actually, masculine energy. But I've had a couple people just in passing saying, well, no, I think it's more feminine, and an orange for me is very masculine. So I do relate it to the god just because it is so much about solar energy for me. But yeah, in here we also have ginger, which kind of helps speed things up or give some action to the spell. And you also have chamomile, which helps give a little bit more peace and a little bit more relaxation. So you've got kind of opposing forces in this brew, but the way that they should work together once the spell is written on the bag should all be good. So yeah, so those are the herbs that I'm using in this. Next we have the stones. So I'm using a lot more stones in this than I normally use. I chose 3 stones for spirit, 3 stones for protection, and 1 stone as an identifier. Reason being, we've got 14 herbs that we're working with. Now we have 7 stones. So we're still working with those masculine sacred numbers. I've got a clear quartz here. And I went with a point because I find, again, that gives a little bit more power. It draws things in a little bit, and I like that. And this website, I did remember to jot down the name of, thespiritscience.net. Great information about spiritual stones. I love it. So clear quartz is a good energy stone. It amplifies thought and energy. It's great for meditation. It dispels negativity and receives and transmits energy. And it also aids with communication for every dimension. So I like that, especially given the purpose of this bag. Then we have some amethyst. And I went with a raw amethyst. Again, I think it's a personal feeling, but if I have a choice between a raw stone or a tumbled stone or a polished stone, I'm going to choose raw every time. I like the feeling of it. I like how the energy is. I resonate much more with raw. So amethyst is a stone of peace, meditation. It enhances psychic abilities. It's calming, protective, and inspiring, and it radiates divine love. So I really wanted there to be that connector in here. Then we kind of switched it up. Blueprints are great to be made, but sometimes things get changed because you find a better option. Sometimes you go with a bit of intuition. I have had nights where I have everything blueprinted out and designed to the max, and suddenly I go, you know what, we're calling it audible. I feel intuitively like this is the better bet. We're going with this. So I had selenite chosen originally, but when I got to the store, I found this stone, and it's opalite. I've never worked with it before. It is gorgeous. I love it, love it, love it. I need to go back to the store and buy a ton more because I just adore this. It is the stone of eternity. It aids with understanding of one's true self and true spirit to free the spirit. And I thought that was absolutely perfect for this. It is known to soften a hardened soul. It helps with peace, gaining knowledge, and communicating and understanding with all realms, especially spiritual, especially the spirit realm. So yeah, that had to go in there. Next, I have some stones for protection. So we have hematite. We have a smoky quartz. And then I had a black tourmaline, and for some reason, this is an intuition change, I went with a lodestone. And I don't really know it as a protective stone. Usually a lodestone is when I want to pull energy in or kind of set things in motion. But it felt right to put in, and so I went with it. So yeah, so we're putting a lodestone in there. And then the last stone we have is a garnet. And the reason for the garnet is that is his birthstone. So that is what I went with. Again, just kind of as an identifier, and helps bring it into, it helps me focus on who it is for and who it is meant for and what the intent is again. I've seen a lot of great videos on the subject that are really great because it reminds us a lot of points are being made of, you know, you don't need all these correspondences, you don't need all these ritual tools, and you don't. All we need is ourselves, and I know I need to remember that from time to time. But pretty much everything you put into a spell, when you use herbs, when you use stones, when you use, you know, tools and enchantments and all that jazz, candles, all of it is for you as the spell caster or the spell creator to focus, to remember what the intent is, to remember what's going on. I think that's why I love correspondences as much as I do, because I love any and every added focus possible. But that's just me. The next part I come to is the writing of the actual spell, what's going on the bag. So, a couple of weeks ago, I went to, actually little under a month ago, I went to YTpaganchallenge in the Twin Cities. It's a pagan convention where you're able to take classes and workshops and all sorts of fun stuff to learn more about the craft, to be able to hang out with fellow pagans and magic users and things, and I absolutely adore it. It's great. And during that weekend, I took a class on using numerology to help with spell writing, and I freaking love it. It's awesome. It's been so helpful. So basically what I did, I wrote down, and again, I know you can't see it all, I wrote down the intent, what I wanted to do, and then you take the vowels and separate them out from the consonants, and then you use your little handy dandy number chart or letter chart to find out what each letter equates to number wise. Let's see if I can get that flap out of there so you can focus. So yeah, you've got, and you can find that online anywhere. I usually just jot it down so I have it for my own notes. And then you count up the vowels, you count up the consonants using that letter chart, and they come to numbers. My vowel count was 3, my consonant count was 4. And the way she taught us was, one of the 2 numbers that you get is the syllables you use, one of the 2 numbers are the vowels are the lines that you use for your spell. For me, using every word with 3 syllables or every word with 4 syllables, it just wasn't clicking, it wasn't working. So I switched it up a bit. I used the 4 lines with my number 4, but then I used 1 syllable words, but I used 3 of them per line. So the first line reads, let him find. The second line, all he seeks. The third line, pull and call. Last line, let him see. And that might not resonate for anyone else. For me, I wrote it down and I looked at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's it. Again, it's what works with you. It's what's going to help you focus on the intent. It's what's going to help make things vibe for you. So don't ever worry, okay, is this going to sound silly to other people? Because no one else has to say it. No one else has to feel it. It's only the person casting the spell that needs to really click. And then for me, I love the witch's alphabet. It makes me happy. So I am going to write it on the bag in the witch's alphabet. Because it looks witchier. I love it. I can't explain fully why it clicks with me the way it does, but it just does. So I have the spell. Now I like to use sigils as much as possible, or symbols. Because the witch's rune of the eye is really a tie-in on this spell, I really wanted to use witch's runes on the bag as well. So the back of the bag is going to have the eye, which that's that. But then the front of the bag, I want to incorporate the Lord and the Lady in there. So the top of it is going to be the sun with the male sign. The sun in the witch's runes, woohoo, there we go. All about abundance, success, all that good stuff. and then the male sign, masculine. Then we have the moon and the female sign in the witch's runes. Moon is all about intuition again, connecting to the spiritual and mystic powers. Excuse me. And then feminine sign, about femininity. I wanted these symbols on there to represent balance. You are seeking, but you should always have balance. Then the last bit I do in my blueprinting is kind of a last look at or plotting out of how things are going to look. So there we have the front of the bag. I have the masculine signs, the feminine signs, the spell in the witch's alphabet. I want the masculine signs in gold, the feminine signs in silver. I want a skeleton key at the top to close it off. Skeleton key is to unlock that which is being sought. Then the back of the bag, real simple, I just want the eye. And the top of the eye has some triangles. I want those triangles to be silver. And the bottom of the eye has some triangles. I want those to be gold. If you notice, you have gold on the top on the front and silver on the top and the back. And then silver on the bottom and the front and gold on the bottom and the back. Again, it's just that mirroring and that balance that I want. And then for the eye insignia and the spell itself, I chose purple or violet ink. The reason for that is spirituality, connection to higher self, insight, clarity, intuition, spiritual power, wisdom, influence, and it also helps to drive away evil. So you have a little bit of that protection in there, which I like. So that's a rundown on the research and plotting that I take into all my spell work. I'm going to move the camera over here. We're going to get going on this bad boy. Normally I would have had this all kind of printed out and done, but I wanted to kind of show how I go about it since it was a pretty easy spell and pretty basic imagery. I'm going to move it out a little bit so I can get my chubby fingers in there. Okay, so this is the front. So I'm going to draw the sun. Even when drawing, I like to use as much magical intent as possible. So I want to bring energy into this. I want to bring clarity to him. So I'm going to go docile when drawing my circle for the sun. And when I draw the rays of the sun, I'm going to bring them in again. So bring them in, bring them in. Didn't connect. There we go. And then I'm going to do the moon and female sign on the bottom. And this is the thing about using Sharpies is you'll see the silver is very fuzzy, the gold is very pointed. It happens. It's not perfect. It's not supposed to be. I personally like it when crafts have a little bit of a roughness to them. So all right, next we want the witch's alphabet. So let E T, and then in between each word I usually put a little dot. I'm not sure why, it's just something I started doing and it worked for me. Him, I, M, find. So F, I, oh, and we're gonna get tight here. D. And again, you'll see the colors kind of bleed a little bit. They're gonna bleed through to the other side too. It's just, it happens. It's not going to be perfect, but it is the thought and the intent. And I think that's another reason why I like doing the witch's alphabet, is because I'm using another alphabet. I have to say the words out loud. I have to think of what I'm writing. All. So all, A-L-L. All he, H-E. Seeks. S-E-E-K-S. All he seeks. Pull. So we got P, U, L, L, and A, N, D. Call is C, A, L, L. Pull and call, let him see. L, E, T, him, H, I, M, S, E, E. And then at the end of the witch's alphabet, you have a little symbol that you draw. There we go. So that is the front. And now we have the back. And all I have to do on the back is draw the eye. And I really liked the eye imagery because it kind of has the triple, oh my gosh, the triple goddess almost within it, because you have 3 circles on the inner eye. The middle one is full, or is darkened. I'm not sure why, I just really dig that. And then I'm going to draw the eyebrow. Let's bring the eyebrow down a little bit more. There we go. Okay. And now we're going to do that mirror imaging. We have 5 dashes on the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I need to get a new silver marker. And then we have 7 on the bottom. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And there we go. I was debating doing a pentacle or the horned god sign or the triple goddess sign, but again, I'm not trying to instill that it has to be a pagan path that he finds. And again, we kind of have that bleed through. It's going to happen, unfortunately. Actually, I kind of like how that looks. But I'm not trying to instill that he has to choose a path that is magical or paganistic or what have you. So although the witch's runes are on there, it is what it is. But I didn't want to put any further imagery than just what I felt worked or called for. So first things first, I'm going to put the identifying items in. So we've got the garnet. And I did cleanse these items beforehand. We have the Palo Santo stick. I'm just going to tuck that in there. And then we've got his herbs for his astrological sign. So that goes in there. Then the spiritual opening. And then, I'm sorry, I'm out of focus again. Let me move the camera where it needs to be. Then the last bit is success and abundance. So I'm going to plug that orange slice in there. And then just tip the ginger and the chamomile. Then I'm going to add the 3 spiritual stones, the 3 protective stones, and now that's all in there. The last thing I do is I have some cinnamon oil, and the cinnamon oil is, it happens to be in a bottle that says cinnamon, but it's not the right oil. It just is what it is. And I'm going to anoint the inside as within. So without as above, so below. Then I'm going to tie this tight. And I am going to use 3 knots for the maiden, for the mother, and for the crone. And the last bit I'm going to do is attach this key. And I might as well do 3 knots for that too. So you've already done 1 for the maiden, the mother, and the crone, just to tie that on. So there we go. That is the sachet bag, and it has its spell, it's got its sigils, it has oil, it has the herbs and the rocks. What I'm going to do now is just kind of hang on to it. Next week is the full moon. I am going to cleanse it and charge it as a whole under the full moon, and then give it to Phil. So that is that. It is all set to go. And that, in a nutshell, is how I go about with spell crafting. Obviously, it's different for every craft, but the research is about the same. The procedure usually is similar. Like I said, this craft was a little different than my normal ones, but I really actually like how it turned out. I'm really cool with it. I wasn't planning on using so much pagan imagery, just because he isn't one, and I try not to be too pushy, but I really like it, and I hope you will as well. So that's what I got. Thanks guys for watching. I'm sorry it was so long, but I thought that would be the best way for me to kind of go through my spell crafting and how I do it. So I hope you enjoyed it. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and I hope you guys have a great night. Bye.